Oh, hello. Hello. Meow meow. Meow meow. Hello, thank you for pets. And hello everyone, I hope you're all having a nice, comfy, cozy night. I'll scroll up a little. Hello, Steph, Aster, Brian, Nibble, Demon Sage, Evie, Cody, and Ratskull, and anyone else who is lurking. Hello, hello. And hello, the dude and Funkimus. Oh yeah, you redeemed the meow. I missed that. But hello. I hope you're all doing well. Yeah. So tonight we're gonna be reading more stuff. Hello, Pasta. All showered and clean. Yay, yay. Now you can crawl in bed and we can read spooky stories. I hope you're all comfy, cozy, with pillows and blankets. A more spooky background. Do you have a spooky background for me? Because I would add it if you have one. Oh. That'll do. FNAF. What's big? Put you there. There we go. That's good, I think. Wait, we're missing the audio visualizer thingy. One second. Gonna go here, then there. There we go. There we go. It's the main menu from Spooky's Mansion. Spooky's Haunted Mansion. Jump Scare. Haunted Mansion. Thank you for pets. And hello down the toilet. Good morning. And good night, Nibble. Wow. I'm in a good mood. I'm excited. I'm happy. They announced the date that the Omori plushies, they announced the time that the Omori plushies will be available. So luckily I don't have to ruin my sleep schedule. We'll be able to buy the Omori plushies hopefully tomorrow at 5 p.m. Yeah. So I'm excited. True, Nibbles is scared of spooky stories. Anyway, for stories, I have a few. I did a little looking around. I'll admit I could have looked around a little bit more, but I found a website called Readsy Prompts, and they do like writing contests every week, so they have like a horror category, so we have some short stories from there, and then I have some hopefully good creepypasta wiki stories. We still haven't barely scratched the surface on these ones. And then I have a cat. And then I have a Reddit that has spooky stories that I thought were kind of cool because they all involve a list of rules. Like, they're weird, they're quirky. And good night, Brian. I hope you sleep well and comfy. Thank you so much for coming by. Sleep well. Night. But yeah, so potentially like 3 levels of like goodness. Like this Readsy website seems pretty good, and the story is pretty long. It's actually really long, the one I picked. And then we have creepypasta. And then we have short Reddit posts. I was kind of reading these before I started streaming, so I like them. They're what you'd expect, though. Not super, super fancy. But yeah, I am open to suggestions if anyone has any, like, spooky. It's a subreddit called r/rules horror. It's a Reddit where, like, the horror stories have a list of rules. Like, I'll start with one of these because they're kind of short. I'll start with one of these. Oh my gosh. I have to read. Forgive me in advance. I'm gonna actually turn the microphone around. I want you to face me. Face me. But yeah, it's kind of a small Reddit, but it has some good stuff. Anyway, I'm not a dictator. You're a dictator. You can have cheese, just don't throw it at me. Anyway, we'll start with this one called Sleepover Rules. These are kind of silly. You can make fun of them. r/no sleep. I looked at some of those. I don't know, that one's like full of like mixed quality stuff. I guess I could do that one too. Let's see. Thank you for pets. Okay, well, we can do some from No Sleep too. Okay. The truly at the bottom of the barrel. I don't know. I think creepypasta would maybe worse. But it's a mixed bag. Anyway, this one's called Sleepover Rules. Hey there, I'm so glad you decided to stay the night with me. Not many people do, but now that you're here, you have no choice. These rules are to ensure your safety. If you fail to follow these rules, you'll become one of them. Have fun. P.S. Keep in mind that they are fake. I live alone. Don't judge me. Afternoon rules. 12:05 a.m. to 12 p.m. 1. Before entering the house, knock 2 times, then stomp once. If someone else answers the door beside me, stand there and don't say anything. The person there will be persistent. Do not look away. After 45 seconds, they will close the door and you must repeat the knock and stomp rule until I answer. Come in, smiley face. Wow. Shots fired at Creepypasta Wiki. I thought the VHS one was good from last time. 2. After entering, you cannot leave until 12 a.m. tomorrow. Do not look behind you and shut the door. 3. Sometimes you might see a man sitting on the couch in the living room laughing at the TV. It will not be on. You must say, I love this show. 3.5. If he stops laughing and stares at you, close your eyes for 15 seconds. Do not open them. Once you hear his laughing again, you may continue on. 4. If the dog sits at the table, do not tell him to get down. Do not pet the dog. He tends to bite. Don't judge. Creepy sledge. 1. 5. There's a painting in the main hall. It will move its placement every time you come out of the room. Its placement and behavior is crucial for your survival. 6. If you make it to my room, put your stuff on my dresser. If you leave it on the floor, you won't get it back. 7. Do not look under the bed. If you drop something under the bed, I hope it wasn't important. 8. If you have to use the bathroom, go to the one with the brown door. When you enter, the shower curtains must be open. If it's not, exit and wait 5 minutes. I'll bite. If you open the door and the painting is in front of you, you must not move until the painting blinks. Once it blinks, go straight back to my room and do not look back. 10. Bedtime is at 9 p.m. If you aren't in the room by 9, I cannot open the door. 11. If you hear screaming at night, put the covers over your head. Do not come out until the screaming stops. 12. If you wake up and I am not there, do not look for me. You are asleep. 13. If you exit my room while you are dreaming, you'll never wake back up. 14. Make sure you cover the mirror beside the bed before falling asleep. If it falls over, do not touch it. It will burn you. If you are hungry or need to use the restroom, you may only come out at the hours of 11 to 12. When you go downstairs, count the steps. If there are more than 24, go back to the room and go back to sleep. 17. If you make it downstairs, my mother will be chopping food in the kitchen. She will stare at you, but do not make eye contact with her. 7.5. She is very clumsy, and she doesn't pay attention well. She will cut off parts of her fingers until she reaches the knuckle in the hand. Do not act as if anything is wrong. 18. If the light in the fridge doesn't come on when you open it, immediately close it. They like to rest in the cold. 19. The blood dripping from the ceiling is very hot. If it drips on you, try not to notice it and continue on. 20. If you try to come back up the stairs and they never seem to end, you are stuck. You must jump over the railing. 21. If you reach the top of the stairs and the attic door is open, run to the kitchen. The creature in there doesn't like Mom. 22. If you make it back to my room and I'm standing up, immediately leave and knock 3 times. Come in and go straight to sleep. Do not look at me. 23. If you see car lights outside of the windows, do not look outside. He doesn't like to be seen. Morning rules. 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. 24. If you wake up before me, take the blanket off the mirror, play rock, paper, scissors with your reflection. If you lose, go back to sleep. If you win, you may stay awake. Do not leave my room until I'm awake. 25. When I wake up, we will go downstairs and eat breakfast. 26. How do you feel about cannibalism? If you don't like it, don't eat the meat. 27. Any leftovers must be put in front of the dog at the table. Quickly place them in front of him and pull your hand away. 28. You must check the basement and make sure no one is down there. If I am, stay there. If no one is, immediately but calmly come back upstairs. If the light won't come on, but you hear breathing, don't move. Until the breathing stops, if the door slams behind you, pray. 29. Do not look in the mirror in the hallway. There will always be more than one person staring back. 30. You must only go back upstairs to grab your items to leave. If you go back up there a second time, you won't come back down. 31. You may only leave at exactly 12:03 a.m. If you stay past 12:05, you have chosen to stay again. 32. When you leave, say goodbye to everyone you see. Exit the house and close the door behind you. Do not look back. 33. Should you make it to your car, if the house has disappeared, drive away as fast as you can. If it's still there and you see yourself waving goodbye from the window, you must wave back and look away from the house. Drive slowly. Well, these are all the rules. I hope you have a really fun time, and I'm so excited you decided to say. Come back soon. Yay. See, they're like that. Rules, horror stories. A lot of them are shorter. That was like the longest one I saw. I Actually, wait, this one's much longer. Wow. Bum, 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 bum. I might just go like back and forth and try different stuff, cause I don't know, I'm bad at planning. Like, I wonder if you could figure out which kind of story I'm reading if I don't tell you first. This one's so long. Okay, we're gonna read this one. I'm gonna challenge myself with this really long one. Let me find a good place for the microphone. Okay. A strange and curious story is this about a banker whose only feat was that he might be buried alive, like his grandfather before him. A heavy stillness hung about the great halls and richly furnished rooms of Judson McMaster's residence, and even seemed to extend out over the velvet lawns, the shrub-lined walks and sun-blotched reaches under the lacy elms and somber maples. Biggs glided about the sick chamber like a spectator, apparently striving to keep busy, while he cast countless furtive, uneasy glances at the heavy figure under the white sheets. An odor of drugs and fever tainted the air. A small walnut table near the flushed sleeper was laden with the familiar prescription bottle, tumbler, and box of powders. On the wall behind the table, near the head of the bed, hung a small oil painting of Napoleon. Hello, Snacko. Welcome, welcome. I hope you're having a nice, comfy night. It's catboy hours, and catboy is reading, stories. Spooky stories. We've just started this one. Also, I believe this is set in, like, the 1930s. I don't know if that's important. 1936. I guess it is important. Oh my gosh. Give me a nice rat skull. The sleeper stirred restlessly, raised himself painfully and slowly, and attempted to seek fleeting comfort in a new position. At first movement, Biggs was a shadow at the bedside, deftly manipulating the coverings and gently aiding the sick man with a tenderness born of long service and deep affection. As the massive gray head sank into the fluffed pillow, the tired eyes opened, lighted by the faint glow of thankfulness. Then they closed again, and the once powerful body relaxed. With a pitiful, wistful expression on his aged face, the faithful Biggs stood helplessly, peering at the sick man until hot tears began to course down his furrowed cheeks, and he turned hastily away. Biggs, the voice, still strong and commanding, cut the semi-gloom like a knife. Biggs, who was about to tuck... Hold on, I need to drink water already. The story's long. That is... Where is... There. Okay. Biggs, who was about to tuck the heavy curtains still more securely over the windows, whirled as though he had touched a live wire, and in a flash was across the great room and beside the bed. "Did you call, sir?" His voice quavered. "No." A faint twinkle lighted the sick man's eyes. "I just spoke." "Ah, now, sir," cried the overjoyed Biggs. "You are better, sir." "Biggs, I want some air and sunshine." "But the doctor, sir." "Drat the doctor. If I'm going to pass out, I want to see where I'm going." "Oh, but sir, expostulated the old servant, as he parted the curtains and partially opened a casement window. "I wish you wouldn't say that, sir. I believe in facing a situation squarely, Biggs. My father and grandfather died from this family malady, and I guess I'm headed over the same route." "Please, sir," entreated Briggs. "Biggs, I want to ask you a question." "Yes, sir." "Are you a Christian?" "I try to be, sir." "Do you believe in death?" Biggs was thoroughly startled and confused. "Why, we all have to die sometime, sir," he answered haltingly, not knowing what else to say. "But do we actually die?" insisted the sufferer. "Well, I hope not. Not yet," ventured the old servant. "The doctor said—" "Forget the doctor," interposed McMasters. "Biggs, you have been in our service since I was a lad, haven't you?" Tears welled into the servant's eyes, and his voice faltered. 56 years, come next November," he answered. "Well, let me tell you something that even in those 56 years you never learned. Biggs, my grandfather was buried alive." "Hello, Hack. You may not strangle me. You may strangle a rascal, though." "And hello." Where was I? Okay, well, let me tell you something that even in those 56 years you never learned, Biggs. My grandfather was buried alive." "Oh, sir, impossible," cried Biggs in horror. "Absolutely," asserted the banker. "Why, how do you know that, sir?" in a hoarse whisper. "My father built a family mausoleum in the far corner of this estate, didn't he?" "Yes, sir. He hated the burial in the earth, sir. After reading a poem of Edgar Allan Poe's, sir." "What poem was that, Biggs?" "I don't recall the name of it, but I remember the line," faltered Biggs. "What was it?" "Oh, sir," cried the old man, "let's talk about something cheerful." "Not until we're through with this discussion, Hiram." Strangle with consent. Oh. "I'm sorry you're upset, Hack. Maybe some spooky stories will improve your mood." "Rascal, come on, be nice." Where was I? I scrolled and I'm like brain dead. "Thank you for pets." The sound of his given name restored Biggs somewhat, for the banker resorted to it only on occasion when he shared his deepest confidences with his old houseman. "Well, the line goes, 'Soft may the worms about him creep,' sir." A slight shudder seemed to run through McMaster's body. Then, after a tome-like silence, "Good reason for building the mausoleum." "Yes, sir, I think so." "Well," with an apparent effort, "when they exhumed my grandfather's remains to place them in a new vault, the casket was opened, and—" "Oh, sir," cried Biggs, throwing out a trembling, expostulating hand, but the banker went on relentlessly. "The body was turned over on its side, with the left knee drawn up part way. That's the way he always slept, in life." Biggs' voice was a hollow whisper. "And that's the reason my father, after building himself a mausoleum, insisted that his body be cremated," said McMasters. "He took no chances." Biggs' horrified eyes traveled dully to the massive urn over the great fireplace and rested there, fascinated. "Hiram, where is heaven?" Biggs' eyes flitted back to rest in surprise upon the questioner. "Why, up there, sir," pointing toward the ceiling. "Do you believe that the earth rotates on its axis?" "That's what it was taught in school, sir." "If that hypothesis is true, we are rolling through space at the rate of about 16 miles a minute. figured the banker. Now you say heaven is up there. Yes, sir. Biggs, what time is it? The servant glanced at the great clock in the corner. It's 12 o'clock, sir, and time for your medicine, in a voice full of relief. Never mind the drugs, commanded McMasters, until we finish our problem in higher mathematics. Now, if I ask you where heaven is at midnight, which will be 12 hours from now, where will you point triumphantly? Why, up there, replied the bewildered servant, again indicating the ceiling. Then, cried McMasters, you will be pointing directly opposite from the place you indicated a moment ago, for by midnight the earth will have turned approximately upside down. Do you get my point? Hello, Rattle-me-bones. Welcome, look. We're reading stories. Yes, sir, replied poor Biggs, thoroughly befuddled. Then where will heaven be at 6 o'clock this evening? Fairly shouted at the sick man. Out there, replied the servant, hopelessly pointing toward the window. And where will heaven be at 6 o'clock in the morning? Over there. And Biggs pointed a trembling finger at the fireplace. Then, oh, sir, let's not. The doctor... Hang the doctor, interrupted McMasters testily. I've been thinking this thing over, and I've got to talk about it to someone. But you don't believe in a hereafter? Queried Biggs, a horrible note of fear in his pitiful voice. Where did what the... My blowing, rustling leaves video paused. For a moment the banker was silent. The massive clock ticked solemnly on. A coal toppled with a sputter and flare in the fireplace. Words. Yes, Hiram, in a thoughtful voice. I suppose I do. I'm glad to hear you say that, cried Biggs in a very evident relief. If you could but tell me, continued the banker, from whence we come and whither we go. If I knew, sir, I'd be equal with the Creator, answered Biggs with reverence. That's well said, Hiram, but it doesn't satisfy me. I've made my place in the world by getting to the root of things. If only I could get a peek behind the curtain before I go backstage, you know. Mayhap I would not be afraid to die. And his voice fell almost to a whisper. The great director does not permit the audience behind the footlights unless he calls them, answered Biggs whimsically, the ghost of a smile lighting up his troubled features. Another thing, Biggs, do you believe those stories about Jonah and Lazarus and the fellow they let down through a hole in the roof to be healed? I do, sir, with conviction. Do you understand how it was done? Of course not, sir, being only a human. Then tell me, Hiram, when you cannot see through it, how can you swallow all of this theology? My faith, sir, answered Biggs simply, raising his eyes with reverence. At this, a quizzical smile came over the sick man's face. In looking up, Hiram, don't forget, since it is 12:30, that we have swung around 480 miles from the spot you originally designated as the location of the pearly gates. Oh, sir, I beg of you, remonstrated the servant. I cannot bear to have you jest on such a... Why, master, he broke off with a little cry, rushing to his bedside. The quizzical smile on the banker's face had suddenly faded, and his head had fallen feebly back on the pillow. Oh, why did he waste his strength so? Cried Biggs, piteously, as with trembling hands and tear-blurred eyes he searched the little table for the smelling salts. After a few breaths, the patient sighed and opened his eyes wearily. My medicine, Hiram, and then I must rest. At midnight, Biggs, dozing in a big chair by the fire, was aroused by the voice from the sick bed. Hiram? Yes, sir? scurrying to turn on a subdued light. Where is heaven now? Noting the wan flicker of a smile, the old servant pointed solemnly downward. You are a bright pupil, came in a scarcely audible voice. Thank you, sir. Do you know, Biggs, I wish I had led a different, better life. You could have been a good master, sir. You have been kind. You have been given liberally to charity, Biggs defended him. Yes, cynically, I have given liberally to charity, but it has been no sacrifice. You've been a pillar in the church, ventured Biggs. Yes, bitterly. A stone pillar. I have paid handsomely for my pew and slept peacefully through the sermons. I have bought baskets of food for the poor at Thanksgiving and Christmas time, only to let others reap the happiness of giving them away. One could have had so much joy out of Christmas if I would. I could have been a jolly, rosy-cheeked Santa Claus and gone to 100 homes, my arms loaded with gifts. True, sir, but you made that joy possible for others, when I should have known the thrill of it myself. I have not really lived. Here I am. To draw the sweets truly out of life, one must humble himself and serve his fellow men. Yes, the scales have fallen from my eyes, here I am, but it is too late. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. It doesn't seem right, sir, said Biggs after a pause. What's that, Hiram? Why, sir, that you should be stricken down in the point of prime in your life, just at a time when you could mean so much to others, while I, old and useless, am permitted to live on. But I am not finding fault with Providence, sir, Biggs hastened to say. I just can't find the meaning of the riddle, sir. Probably I've had my chance and fumbled it, Biggs. Even so, sir, God is not vindictive, according to my ideas. There surely is some other solution. I'm still going to pray that He will take me in your stead, even if a miracle must be performed. So you have faith in your prayers, do you, Biggs? Yes, sir, if they are unselfish prayers. That brand is rather scarce, I take it, answered McMasters, but his tone was reflective rather than sarcastic. Oh, sir, I wish you would pray as I do. God would surely understand. Rather a queer request, Hiram. If my life depends upon your death, no prayer shall pass my lips. But, sir, I am an old... However, interrupted McMasters, I shall pray that if my life is spared in any other fashion, I will make full amends for my years of indifference and neglect. And here I am. No one knows I think that's a typo. No one knows how much I truly seek this divine dimension. But I have always scoffed at deathbed confessions, and so my heart grows cold, for I have no right to ask now. Again, wearily. No, right now. Sounds a little weird. It has an interesting name, but oh god, we're like halfway through. It Biggs the servant and McMasters, the dying banker on his bedside. Ah, master, God is plenteous in mercy, but if you have but the faith, sir, it shall make you whole. Very good. Had I lived as you have lived, Biggs, then after a pause. Still, the cause is worthy, my heart is right, and I shall approach the throne. May God be merciful unto me, a sinner. And it's in the 1930s, so I guess most people were pretty religious back then. I hope it is not too late yet, faltered. Oh, if God would only call me in for stead, that you might still do good work that you find it in your heart to do, how gladly I would go. A deep sigh was his only answer. A long silence was finally broken by the sick man, but when he spoke, his voice was so strange and uncanny that the servant hastened to dose and peered anxiously into the fever-flushed face of the sufferer. "Hiram, I must tell you a secret," came in laborious, almost sepulchral whisper. Biggs came closer. "Bring a chair and sit down. I must talk to you." As the old servant again leaned down forward, the sufferer hastened. Then with an obvious effort he began. "Hiram, I'm going to give you some instructions which you must obey to the letter. Will you promise to keep them?" "I swear it, sir," with great earnestness. "Good. Now, if this fever seals my lips and the doctor pronounces me dead—" "Please, sir," Biggs broke in, tears streaming down his furrowed cheeks, but his master continued in the same subdued voice. "Whatever happens, I am not to be embalmed. Do you hear me? Not embalmed, just laid away as I am now." "Yes, sir," in a choked voice, which fully betrayed the breaking heart behind it. "And now, Hiram, the rest of the secret." He paused and beckoned Biggs to lean closer. "In my vault, in the mausoleum, I have had an electric button installed. That button connects with a silver bell. Lift up that small picture of Napoleon there upon the wall." His hands trembling as with the palsy, Biggs reached out and lifted aside the picture hanging near the head of the bed, and there revealed the silver bell, fitted into a small aperture in the wall. Then, with a sob, he fell back into his chair. "Thank you for the fellow, Gust." "Hiram," in a whisper, "after they bury me, you are to sleep in this bed." With a cry, the old man threw out a horrified, expostulating hand. Catching it feverishly, the banker half raised himself in bed. "Don't you understand?" he cried fiercely. "I may not be dead after all. Remember grandfather. And Biggs, if that bell rings, get help, quick." Suddenly releasing his hold, McMasters fell back limply among the pillows. All through the long night the faithful Biggs maintained a sleepless vigil, but the banker lay as immovable as a stone. When the rosy-cheeked dawn came peeping audaciously through the casements, Biggs drew the heavy curtains tightly shut once more. Not until the doctor's motor whirred away did the patient rouse from his lethargy. Apparently strengthened by his deep stupor, he spoke, and Biggs stood instantly beside him. Where am I? There's a horror story, for example, a story about a guy lost on a spaceship and left to die. The story is the man trying to grip on why he lived in the first place. That sounds interesting. I would read that. I would actually love to read some sci-fi horror. "What did the doctor say?" Biggs hesitated. "Out with it. I'm no chicken-hearted weakling." "Nothing much," admitted Biggs, sadly. He only shook his head very gravely. "He doesn't understand this family malady any more than the old quack who allowed my grandfather to be buried alive," said McMasters almost fiercely. Biggs shuddered and put a trembling hand to his eyes. "What ails me, Biggs?" almost plaintively. "No one knows. This fever has baffled the scientists for years. When you fall into a comatose condition, they call it suspended animation. That's the best thing they do. Find names for diseases. My family doctor doesn't have any more of an idea about this malady than you and I. The average physician is just a guesser. He guesses you have a fever and prescribes a remedy, hoping that it will hit the spot. If it doesn't, he looks wise, wags his head, and tries something else on you. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. The only thing my guesser is absolutely sure of is that if I live or die, he will collect a princely fee for his services." Biggs remained statuesque during the pause. "Gad," McMasters broke out again, testily. If I fiddled around in my business like that, I'd be a pauper in a month. But the doctor says you're coming on, ventured Briggs. Sure he does, answered the banker with a sneer. That's his stock in trade. I know that line of palaver. Secretly, he knows I am as liable to be dead as alive when he comes again. Oh, sir, you aren't going to die. That's what I'm afraid of, Biggs. But they'll call me dead and go ahead and embalm me and make sure of it. Oh, sir, I wish... Now remember, Biggs, broke in the sick man. Shoot the first undertaker that tries to put that mummy stuff in my veins. I understand perfectly, sir, answered Biggs, fearful lest the other's excitement might again give him a turn for the worse. I know I'm apparently going to pass away. My father and grandfather both had this cursed virus in their veins, and I don't believe either of them were dead when they were pronounced so. Well, by any chance, that is, if you, began Biggs desperately, if you're apparently dead, why not have them keep your body here in the house for a time? Convention, formality, custom, hidebound law. The banker fairly frothed. The health authorities would come here with an army and see that I was buried. No, Biggs, I've got a fine crypt out there, all quiet and secure, good ventilation, electric lights, like a Pullman berth, and a push-button that precludes all notoriety. It's secret and safe. The electrician who installed the apparatus died 4 years ago, so you and I alone possess this knowledge. Don't you think someone else should know of it too? Your attorney, or... No, Biggs. If I am really dead, I don't want anyone to write up my eccentricities for some Sunday magazine sheet. And if I do come back, then it will be time to tell the gaping public about my cleverness. I wish you weren't, sir, so cold-blooded about it all, sir. I've always hit straight from the shoulder, Hiram, and I'm facing this death business as I'd face any other proposition. I'm not ready to cash in, and if I can cheat the doctors, undertakers, lawyers, heirs, and chief mourners for a few more years, I'm going to do it. And don't forget poor old Granddad. He might have been up and about yet had he but used my scheme. And Biggs turned away, sick at heart. It was too terrible, beyond words. To him, his religion was as essential as daily bread. Death was the culmination of cherished belief and constant prayer. As his years declined, he had faced the inevitable day with simple faith that when the summons came, he would go gladly, like him, who wraps the drapery of his couch about him and lies down to pleasant dreams. With throbbing heart, he listened for another torrent of words that would still further stab his sensitive soul, for he had loved and revered his master from his youth up. But no words came. He wheeled about. The massive head had fallen limply among the pillows. Pallid lips were trying to form sentences without result. Then the great body seemed to subside immeasurably deeper into the covers, and a death-like stillness fell upon the room. Intuitively, feeling that his master was worse than at any previous relapse, Biggs made every effort to revive him, gently at first, and then by vigorously shaking and calling to him in a heartbroken, piteous voice. But to no avail. The heavy figure looked pallid and corpse-like under the snowy sheets. Long hours dragged by, and still the lonely old servant sat mutely beside the bed, only aroused at last by the peremptory, measured call of the telephone bell. "Yes," said Biggs in a quavering voice. "Oh yes, Dr. Meredith. Master's resting easy. Don't think you'll need to come up until tomorrow." He's lying. "I'll keep them away as long as I can," he muttered, as he slipped back to his vigil. "God grant. Maybe he'll come back, and take up the work of the Master so long delayed. O God, if thou would only take me in his stead. Sleeping fitfully, Biggs sat dumbly through an interminable night. But the new day brought no reassuring sign from the inert form. The stillness was appalling. The other servants were quartered in the distant part of the mansion and only came when summoned. Again Biggs assured the physician that he could gain nothing by calling, and another awful night found him, ashen and distraught, at the bedside. Sometimes, in the still watches, he swooned, and kindly nature patched up his shredded nerves before consciousness once more aroused him. But the strain was more than he could bear. So when the anxious specialist came, unbidden, he found a shattered old watchman who broke down completely and babbled forth the whole mysterious tale, concealing nothing but the secret of the tomb. In a coffin previously made to order, they laid the unembalmed remains of Judson McMasters into the family mausoleum, and the world which had felt his masterful presence for so many years paused long enough to lay a costly tribute on his bier, and then went smoothly on its way. Not so with the faithful Biggs. Ensconced in his master's bedroom, he nightly tossed in this troubled sleep, filled with the jangling of innumerable electric bells. Wait, what? The bells are ringing? When, on the 10th night, after he had somewhat reassured that all was well, he was suddenly awakened by a mad, incessant ringing from the hidden alarm. A deathly weakness overcame him, and it was some time before he was able to drag his palsied body from the bed. With fumbling, clumsy fingers he tried to hasten, but it was many minutes before he tottered, half-dressed, out of the room, and as he did so his heart almost stood still, then mounted to his throat as if to choke him. Biggs! A voice! McMaster's voice was calling. He staggered to the head of the wide, massive stairway and looked down. There stood the banker, pale, emaciated, but smiling. I forgot to tell you that I had a trapdoor at the end of the casket. When you didn't answer the bell, I found I could come alone. With an inarticulate cry, Biggs stretched out his trembling arms. My master, I am coming now. Then he swayed, stumbled, clutched feebly at the railing, and plunged headlong into the foot of the stairs, a crumpled, lifeless form. That's the end. That one is a little weird. Hello, Talon. Hello. Hope you're having a nice, comfy night. We are reading Suki's stories. That one was, really nice reading. The dialogue was easy to follow. At least for me. But did we like that one? Did you all enjoy the long conversation between the servant and the dying master? Thank you for pets. I'd be happy to continue. Just jump right into another story if that's okay. Someone hasn't watched Seinfeld. What? Very religious. I could... I bet this one with the furry art isn't gonna be religious. But this one doesn't have as good of a rating. Oh wait, it's literally a Pokemon creepypasta. Never mind. Do we want to read the Pokemon one? This one's short, we might as well read it. Okay. We should drink a little bit. A little sippy sip. Pokemon. This one's probably not written as well. It all started about 2 weeks ago. I'll stretch. I'm good. It all started about 2 weeks ago. I was shopping with my friends when we went into the local game store. I walked over to the shelf where the new Pokemon games were. Pokemon Black and White versions. 30 pounds, euros, 30 pounds each. Damn, I need a tenner. This is very British. I searched through my purse. I only had 20 pounds. I decided to look at the pre-owned games section. After about 10 minutes, most of my friends had bought their copies of Portal 2 and Nintendogs 3D and were standing next to me, helping me search through the shelves. It was another 5 minutes before we found anything. Got it. I grinned and held up a DS box. Pokemon Black version, pre-owned, only 10 pounds. Got a tenner? My friend stared at the price tag. It clearly says it there, 10 pounds. I took it over to checkout and bought it. It was definitely 10 pounds. When our trip was over and I was at home, I quickly slotted Pokemon Black into my DS Lite. The game started up and I selected a new game. I got through the Juniper lecture, selecting the female player character. I couldn't think of anything to call her, so I just typed in Hilda. I clicked enter, and Juniper checked if my name was Black. I went back and typed in Hilda again, but it kept saying Black. In the end, I gave in and confirmed that my name is Black. I chose Snivy as my starter, very based, and soon I had all 8 badges. The Elite Four were pretty easy. I took care of the fighting and ghost type members with my Victini. My superior handled the others. But then it got to the final showdown with N. And that is when everything changed. Most of my Pokemon were level 65 or higher by this point, due to my excessive training. Catching Reshiram and taking down N should be no trouble. How wrong I was. The cutscene where Reshiram appears before you was triggered. The light stone rose into the air and the curled-up figure of Reshiram emerged. When it opened its eyes, they were blood red. So were its claws and rings. I stopped. That wasn't normal. It couldn't have been the shiny version. The shiny version had gold rings. I sighed and entered the battle scene. I selected my Master Ball. Reshiram doesn't want to be caught. I knew I wouldn't get any XP for defeating it, and it would be in the Dragon Spiral Tower if I ran away. I ran away from it. Would you like to give a nickname to Reshiram? I stopped. That was impossible. I had ran away. I was too shocked to think of any good nicknames, so I just wrote Truth. What? I added it to my party. I closed the screen and was greeted by a cutscene. One of those 3D ones. Some kind of Easter egg? It couldn't have been made by anyone other than the people who did the other clips. Truth turned around and lashed out at Black with its claw. She stumbled back and fell down into what used to be the pool around the edge of the hall. I just stared at the screen. Nothing made any sense. Truth's white fur was speckled with blood as it turned back to face N and Zekrom. It charged at Zekrom, who had hardly any time to react. In seconds, Truth had its claw through Zekrom's chest, with its red claws dripping with blood. Truth grinned as Zekrom's heart crumbled into black dust, yanking its claw from Zekrom's corpse. Truth tossed the body aside, letting it fall into the pit. It landed a few meters away from Black, who lay there in a pool of blood. Truth turned back, ignoring N, and jumped down, landing in between Black and Zekrom's corpse. Truth raised a claw and thrust it into Zekrom's side. It began to smear blood on the wall, then smashed its palm into the wall, leaving its claw print in blood on the wall. Truth turned to look at Black, who was leaning against the wall, her hand over her wounds, barely able to stand. She began making her way over to Truth. She placed her hand over Truth's print. They both turned and read the words Truth had written. Truth hurts, doesn't it? I tried to turn off my DS. Nothing happened. Truth turned and smashed through the walls, making his own path out of the castle. Black followed, chasing after the bloodied dragon. Eventually they had reached the steps from the champion down to the Elite Four. Black stood next to Truth, who turned around, ignoring her completely. It sat there for a while, just staring into the horizon, gazing at all the towns ahead. Text started to appear at the bottom of the screen. Truth, do you treat your Pokemon well? I selected yes. Truth, I am Truth. Don't even try to lie to me. Truth's tail erupted into flames, and it flew down the steps, with Black chasing after it again. After some time, they were just outside the entrance of Victory Road. Truth's tail was blackened and bloody now. I was almost sick. There were bits of muscle sticking out everywhere. I tore the game out of the DS and forgot about it for a few days, but one night I couldn't sleep, and I did something foolish. I slotted Pokemon Black back into my DS. The game cut straight to the cutscene. No start screen, no rotating reshiram, but the cutscene was not at the exact point where I'd left it. Black was standing, staring at a huge sea of flames. The map screen opened. I was in Opelucid City. Opelucid. I realized that the cutscene was now over. I walked around the streets. Everything was covered in flames and blood. I tried walking back to Route 10. The path was blocked by a pile of bloodied corpses. Many had chunks of flesh torn away. Unable to stare at these gruesome sprites anymore, I ran to the exit for Route 9. Blocked by bodies. So was the exit for Route 11. I decided to try and search the city for Truth. As I walked more blood-stained streets, until I was running down the roads like a river. I followed the trail until I reached a point where it seemed to flow under one of the doors, the battle house. The sign had been written over in blood. It no longer advertised rotation battles. It was a warning. Stay away. I entered. Blood was flowing down the stairs. I couldn't climb up, so I searched the room downstairs. Later, having found nothing, I left the battle house and headed toward the gym. Truth was there. I walked up to it, and a battle scene triggered. I couldn't call out any of my Pokemon, and I had no more moves and couldn't run away. Truth used Shadow Claw. Black passed out. The screen faded into black. For a moment I thought my DS had shut off, but I checked and it was still on. The screen stayed that way for a while, though text started slowly appearing at the bottom. Black. Black. Black, wake up. The blank screen faded into another cutscene, a field surrounded by a vast ring of fire. On one side, Truth stood behind Black. On the other side stood the male playable character, Hilbert. I guessed that I was about to battle him, so I opened my party. No Pokemon. The cutscene resumed when I exited the menu. Truth turned around. You're probably wondering where your Pokemon are. You won't be needing them again. All this time you've sent your Pokemon out. No matter how much energy they had left, no matter how much they had suffered. Now you shall know how it feels. This is kind of a dumb one. A battle scene was suddenly triggered. Trainer White wants to battle. Trainer White used Stomped. My health gauge, which had only been at half at the start of the battle, began to slowly go down. Trainer Black used Pound. It kept going, turn after turn, move after move. I was at a severe disadvantage against an opponent who started with a full health gauge. I had only 3 hit points left. I opened the bag. It was completely empty. No Pokeballs, no medicine, nothing. I sighed. Stupid game. Trainer White used High Jump Kick. I wish that move would miss, but wishes never come true. Trainer Black has died. The game cut back to the cutscene. Truth was glaring at the screen. Its eyes seemed to burn into my mind. Slowly, the image began to glitch. Eventually, it was just a massive mist of pixels. At that moment, I ripped the Pokemon Black game cartridge out of my DS and hurled it at the wall. It shattered into pieces. They fell into the bin just underneath. Later, I checked the box. Apart from being a bit tatty, well, it was a pre-owned game, there wasn't much wrong, but I knew something wasn't right. The instruction manual. I never read it. I flicked through the pages as if the booklet was an animation flipbook. There was something scrawled onto the notes page. I finally fixed it. I managed to hack into the game and I reinstalled the events that occur when Reshiram dismisses the player. The white version must repeat. The handwriting was extremely messy, and the end became almost impossible to read. It's as if the person was trembling as they wrote it. I closed the booklet, placing it back in the box, and dumping the box into the bin. It landed on its front. Something was written in blood on the back of the case. Truth hurts, doesn't it? That's what I was telling him. No more Pokemon creepypastas. Oh, there's a bunch of them, though. The comments section is full of people not happy that Zekrom died. Okay, let me pick another one. Cryptids? Yeah, cryptids. Cryptids. This one is from 4chan, I guess. It starts off as a green text format, but then it goes into a normal story. Okay, here's my story. Be 16, be black and have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out in the woods for hunting or camping. Down south, cousins suggest that we go out there to camp. No, I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the frick out of me. Collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. We get to the camp, and it's obvious something's weird. Air has this weird electric smell like right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it and unpack and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello. He asks us what we're doing at this far in the woods. Tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say we're camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together. There's a big animal. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says, okay. I'm going to stop green texting because the story is fairly long and the format is harder to write in. Thank you. Thank you for not green texting. This one's actually kind of long. So we end up playing football, messing around with me. There's this white kid, Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there were 5 girls and 6 boys. We were all around 15 to 17. We ended up just messing around I'm trying to replace the swear words with not swear words. We ended up just wasting the day away. So we head back into the camp and pull out some stuff for a campfire. Even though the trailers both had kitchenettes, Tanner says that his family properly more zippy water. Okay. Tanner says that his family's property sits up against my uncle's. He wants to run home and ask his dad if he can come out camping with us. Hello, Patriot. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with him since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls also wants to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail towards Tan's property. The rest of us chill. We make s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. Kissing girls! What the? About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire that we had started. This really nasty, coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it's stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty metallic back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some kind of electrical malfunction, or someone left a hot plate on or something. We search the trailers and nothing is on, and we can all smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking down the path toward us, and Rooster, Tan, and the girl all come running into the clearing out of breath. And they don't even break stride. They all run into the trailer right by where the fire is. We all get out of there and into the trailers. They end up calming down. Even Rooster is crying his eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire is guttering lower and lower. So my cousins say, screw it, and are about to go outside to get the generator out of a shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, no, lock the front door. Ain't nobody else going outside. He's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot and puffy, and his pants are dirty. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure, he could go out camping, but to make sure that they were careful on the way back, and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before. One of their pigs had come up, ripped up in half and eaten. They assumed it was just some big cat or something, or a coyote. Even though they usually don't mess around with live animals. That is false. Coyotes absolutely mess with live animals. He had gone upstairs and packed up his stuff, and told his dad that they would be okay without the rifle because coyotes avoid people. So they started walking back toward where they were camping. I'm not eating the pigs. No. Maybe a little pig. So, Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already had, but she was just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. He says that they had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they started to hear stuff in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what it was. The girl says that she heard something in the bushes right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing back in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said that they shouted at him and told him he was scaring them. He says that's when he realized that the guy was facing away from them. So they keep walking, and they start smelling the nasty coppery ozone smell. They say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and it's the dude standing in the forest, backing backwards slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking, and Tan keeps going. I should have taken the rifle. As they're telling the story, the smell is getting super strong even inside the cabin. They say that after they had started walking faster, a kind of low gibbering had started coming from both sides of the woods. And as they started booking it back to the trailer, the girl said she had flashed her flashlight out into the woods to the side of them and had seen something jerking itself through the woods. The gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from her campfire, something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track, and they had just flat out ran as hard as they could to the trailer. So we're out in the woods, and we're assuming at this point it's some rednecks or something trying to mess with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to school with that native kid that was telling him about the goat man. We promptly tell him to shut up because we don't need any spooky stories right now. But he just keeps going on and about how it's the goat man and how we're in his woods and blah blah blah. Now at the time, I had never heard of this goat man or any of that, but a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a minom for a roommate, and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift and he gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo. It's bad mojo to even talk about it, and worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16, so my cousin is going, the goat man's going to get in and get us. The girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are all trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or if it's an animal. So all of a sudden, the smell just goes away. Like, to this day, I haven't experienced anything like it. Like, usually smells fade away or lessen. It just literally was there 1 second, and then not the next. So it's after an hour, making it around 9 or 10. We've stopped freaking out enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figure it was just some person trying to mess with us, so we don't go back home, because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or something. Nothing else weird happens that night, and we stay another night, and for the main part of the night, nothing happens. At about 1 a.m, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone's finishing some too spooky story, I don't remember what it was about, the smell comes back, and it's so strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. I say we should get inside and this isn't right, we should have just left. We all go back inside, and we're standing around. My cousin just keeps going on about how it's the goat man, and my cousin Rooster tries to shut him up. All the while, I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what it is. We end up sitting in there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled up together in the camper. We ended up cooking brats for everyone because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats. We have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everyone a hot dog. I get mine. After a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one. He starts grumbling about how I get 2 brats and everyone else got 1. And I look at him like he's stupid. I told him everyone got 1 because there was only 12. If he wants more, he should open up a new pack and cook some more. That's when the girl that had been out with Rooster and Tan just starts screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get it out." She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin standing up what is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room, and then I feel my heart sink. I run out of the cabin, and the girl runs out with me. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer as everyone books it out of the cabin. Only one of my cousin's friends asks us what was wrong. I start counting us. There's only 11 now. I kid you not, my cousin verified there had been 12 people in the cabin, but being that everyone didn't really know each other that well, nobody had really noticed that there was an extra person. And then I realized that I kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you're just messing around and having a good time, that you don't sweat the small stuff, and you don't always keep track of certain things. I'm dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us, that they had been in there for at least a day, eating with us. What makes it worse is that I could figure out which one because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person / the goat man. And hello, Merc. Welcome. You can take it easy here. My cat's here, meowing and stomping around. But we're reading spooky stories tonight. Cat. The goat man. The goat man's a skinwalker. That's what these are. Transforming animal thingies. The girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all outside. I'm sorry for the religious talk, by the way. We can't avoid it. Eventually, we got the big sticks, we get big sticks and go back in the cabin, but there's nobody in there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the heck happened, and the girl says she realized too, and that when we were about to say something, The person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard and leaned over toward her and said something she couldn't understand. Goatman. Been drinking a little. That sounds good, as long as it's not too much, Patriot. Okay, so we were pretty much scared as heck as we cuddled together, and I fell asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up and half the people are asleep and the other half are packing their stuff. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is up all the way, and some people think that we're just messing around and they still want to stay in the trailers. I just want to get out of the woods. The girl's name was Kira, the one that the goat man had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks it was something bad, and she says she just wants to go home and she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we have decided to split up. The 4 that want to go can go, but I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin and it's pretty much... I have the keys to the cabin and it's my uncle's and I have to lock up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this seriously, and I definitely didn't want to be out in the woods for another night. I spent the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to get the heck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and he says he's going to be back, so there's just 7 of us left by 4 p.m. At around 5 p.m. he hadn't made it back yet, and we're getting extremely antsy. The only reason I stopped begging them to go back was because he went to get a gun. It's about 5:30 now. The cousin who did stay says that the girl, Kira, is outside. We all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, if she was so scared, why would she come back? And then I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time the coppery smell has been gone. Now I realize I can just smell a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them and everybody, and these are the people that wanted to stay in the woods after we had the goat man in our midst. Is laughing at me and ask if I set this up to scare them. Hello, Tin Man. Welcome. I haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're having a nice comfy night. Okay. I'm looking at them like, I'm not messing with y'all right now. I ask them why the heck would I play like that. So one of the girls goes outside to get Kira. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kira starts heaving. I don't know how the heck to describe it. Sort of like if someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. It was this fact that made me realize there was not a sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was like later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too, and you could usually hear the geese honking or some kind of bird or squirrels chittering. So now I step out of the door and tell her to come back in the trailer right now. She backs up into the trailer and we lock the door. We pull down all the shades except one and put a guy there in a chair to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. The guy turns to say that she's still there, and there's this huge bang on the door. Hello, Ravi, it's too scary, I'm sorry. Thank you for the resub, Prime sub, 9 months, wow. Prepare to be spooked, even more. We all jump and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super loud. So now my cousin is holding one of the girls, and the other 2 are kind of giggling with nervous laughter and telling me that the other guys are crapping bricks. Yeah, we'll go with that. Then we hear Tan. He's screaming, "Let me in, stop playing." So we go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl. Mind you, he said it wasn't Kira standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she had turned toward him with a slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing toward the camp. He said it wasn't until he got almost halfway to the trailer he had realized that she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without him even seeing her move, she had been turning, inching closer. He said he just ran the rest of the way back to the cabin thinking it would open, and when he got to the door and it was locked, he turned and it was about half the distance to the door. He looks around the room and then gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers into my ear, "You know there are only 7 of us in here, right?" I get that feeling where your stomach drops to your gut. Colorful language in this. It had been back inside the trailer while we were out sorting who was going where, and then when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it had slipped right in. Thank you for pets. We looked out the window and there was nobody out there. So we recount everyone, and then basically I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier, and everyone says 8. I then say, "How many are in here now?" They all do the count, and then realize there are now only 7 people in the cabin. So Tan had brought back a couple of boxes of ammo and his rifle, and he had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said it was a goat man. He said that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours, and that in the morning we can all go back to his place, and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really terrified, but at least I feel better because we can be American and shoot whatever it is if it comes back. But then my cousin, who gets into this huge argument with one of the girls, she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's getting really scared, and that I'm not funny. He keeps telling her that I'm not that kind of person, and she says, "Well, how do we know the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it really is the goat man, how do we know that this is the real Tanner, and the goat man didn't just kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun?" So we get into a huge argument about this, where me and Tan are like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least someone has been sneaking themselves into our trailer without us knowing and mingling with us. And at worst, something bad is in the forest messing with us. One of the girls is crying and says that she wants to go right now, and we were trying to tell her we shouldn't because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent, so we turn it off about the time Tan's cousin shows up. He was like 19, I think. At this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper to Tan asking if he's sure that that's his cousin, and he says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp, then walks in. He kind of glances at us and looks a little confused. He says, "Where's your other little buddy at? I figured she would meet up at the cabin. Is she a little slow or something?" He also asked whether we had been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelled like blood in hot pans all the way up the trail. We were all like, "Nope." But we asked him what the heck he's talking about with the girl he saw. He had come down the same trail Tan had been using, and he had come up on one of Yu's guy's buddies, standing in the middle of the trail, looking at him slack-jawed. He had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was look at him. Then she smiled at him, and he said he kept walking. She couldn't seem to keep up with him, and kept lagging a little behind. But he said if he asked her if she was hurt or something, and if she needed any help, but she had continued to stare. Eventually, he had been walking and turned around a bend in the trail, but when he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He'd assumed she had taken some shortcut through the woods. We tell him the whole story of what's been going on. I half expected him to say we were lying, but he just listened and sat down on the couches in the living room. I'm a little sleepy kitty. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl. He says when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it kind of weirded him out, so he tried to keep her in front of him. But no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind, and that he smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. Eventually it got really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he had turned around, she had been right on him, and he stepped back from her. It was at this point he asked her if she was okay, and if she wasn't wanted to be carried back to the trailer. Words. and she just kept staring. He said he reached out for her as if to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of where he'd put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, we know this is real. Unless Tan is trying to play a joke, which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. So they load up their rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. Okay. To this day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's some huge pranks that my cousin played on me and just never revealed, so I would be afraid for the rest of my life. At around 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty, gross, blood-like smell, and cooking blood and singed hair. Tan and his cousin Reese get up instantly and grab the rifles. There's like a half-knocking, half-clawing at the door. And I kid you not, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk. It says in this halting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me in, stop playing." It made me shudder, and one of the girls just started crying and calling on Jesus. It was so obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence, and that's some stuff I never realized until that moment. But all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain rhythm to talking. This stuff didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. One of those YouTube cats, that's what it sounded like outside the door. So now I'm in full-on terror mode. We kept yelling outside, "Who is it? Stop messing around, man." And it just keeps saying "in" or "let me in" for almost 15 minutes. Oh, there's a YouTube video. Do we want to click the YouTube video? Video unavailable. That was lame. We could have seen some YouTube cats. Good. Are you spooked? It sounded like this almost, just not funny. Sorry for being on a tangent, but if you can't imagine how this sounded, then you can't imagine how messed up the whole situation was. So, then the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around in the woods and stuff. Every couple of minutes, it'll come back into the door and say something. Finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 in the morning. Reese says, "Man, screw this," and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." He fires 2 more bullets, and then from the woods right up against the river from the trailer, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like, I seriously have never heard anything like that in my life. And you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line and then starts backing into the house. We lock the door and we can hear the stuff keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes, super low to the ground and crawling toward the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much. That's how the rest of the night went. It was literally screaming constantly for the next 2 hours, and we could hear stuff moving out into the tree line. It never came back up to the cabin until everyone had fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in the chair watching the door with his rifle. No one else heard or saw this, and he told me 2 days later after this whole thing was over. He said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped, and he had been only almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down in the middle of the floor to go to sleep. He just assumed it was one of us, and he had nodded off. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing, or heave like it was laughing, but then it would lay back down. The story closes pretty weak because, from my perspective, nothing happened. We woke up, and I noticed that Tan was a little jittery, and that he was avoiding looking at all of us. But we ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys, to just start walking and he'd catch up, which I really didn't want to do. We got a little bit up the path, and then he came running up. Basically, we just jogged back to his house. His cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. 10 had gone back to look up and looked in there. We were too stupid to lock a screenless window. The window was up when he went in there. I'm guessing it had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then getting in among us. It walked with us all the way back to his house, and then he said it lagged to the back of the group and looked him dead in the eyes before walking into the woods. Spooky. And good night, staff. Night night. Thank you so much for hanging out, spending time with us. I hope you have sweet dreams and sleep well and everything. Thank you for this. Thank you. Thank you. Reading is tiring. They had 2 guns. They shot at something skittering out of the bushes or whatever. Let's move and read a story from the No Sleep Reddit. It's so bright. My eyes. Okay. Are stories on Reddit allowed to be lewd? Because this one has like kind of a lewd name. Whatever. I'm not gonna read the name. Okay, here's a really high rated story on r/nosleep. His Tinder profile said he was 45, but he looked to be in his early 30s at most. Looking for a sugar baby. $700 weekly. No sex. It sounded too good to be true, but as a broke university student, I was willing to take my chances. I swiped right, and Tinder let me know it was a match. His message came seconds later. Hey there, sweetheart. I cringed at that word. I hated it. But $700 was $700, so I sucked it up and replied, hey, winky face. No sex. His name was Jack, and he told me he owned his own business, although he never specified what kind of business it was. We talked for a while before he asked for my Venmo to send me the first payment. After a few minutes, I got the notification. I stared at the $700 for at least 20 minutes, expecting to wake up from a dream at any second. But it wasn't a dream. You still there? I clicked on the message. Yeah, sorry, if you don't mind me asking, what are you looking for in return? I stared at the chat until he replied, I'm just looking for you to do a few favors for me. That sounded like it was going to be sexual. Like what? For example, the first thing I need you to do is pick up a delivery for me. That sounded innocent enough. But I was still expecting there to be some kind of twist. $700 to pick up a package? Come on, even I wasn't that naive. From the post office or something? No, I'll send you the address, but I'd rather not do this through Tinder. You got Kik, or you can give me your number. Kik? Was this 2011? I decided to give him my number instead, and he texted me the address immediately, followed by the address to his house where I would have to drop off the package. I'm not home right now, but there's a key on the bottom of the blue flower pot near the door. Go inside and put the package on the coffee table in the living room. Make sure that you lock the door when you go inside the house, and then lock it again when you leave. I grabbed my car keys and wallet and got into my car, putting the address into Google Maps. Got it. On my way. My phone buzzed as I looked back out of my driveway. I'm serious. Lock the door both times, please. I thought this was a little excessive, but I promised him I would. The house looked abandoned. It had a broken chain-link fence around it, with a small door that was hanging on to dear life. It stuck out like a sore thumb, surrounded by houses that were a lot nicer than this one in comparison. You here for Jack's stuff? I looked up to see a man standing in the open doorway of the house. He took up almost the entire space, his head skimming the top of the door frame. He was huge, in height and muscles, and his entire torso was covered with tattoos. Yeah, I guess, I replied, not moving from my spot on the sidewalk. Stay right there, he said. I did. I actually don't think I would have moved, even if he had asked me to. I looked around and realized that there was no one else on the street. I was a 21-year-old woman alone on the street. I gripped my car keys. A few minutes later, the man came back out carrying a cardboard box. It was about the size of a shoebox, but stained and damp on some of the corners. Can you open your car? He asked. I opened the trunk, not wanting that inside my car seats, and he set it in. All right, there you go, he said. Thanks, I replied. I walked around to the driver's side of the car door and I walked around to the driver's side and opened the door. Oh, and one more thing, he said. I looked at him. Watch out. I didn't reply. I blasted my music as I drove to Jack's house, hoping it would drown out my anxiety. It didn't. I parked my car in the stone driveway and stayed inside, admiring the house. It was a huge house with stone pillars on the front porch and the greenest grass I had ever seen in my life. I turned the car off and got out. I grabbed the package and walked to the front door, getting the key from where he said it would be. I opened the door and stepped in, closing it behind me. I thought about what he had said about locking the door when I got inside. I thought that was a little overboard, but as I stared at the closed door, something made me reach out and lock it. I walked inside, my feet cushioned by the thick maroon carpet, and admired the inside of the house. All the furniture was wooden and looked incredibly expensive. I would probably finish school a dozen times with the money that it took to furnish this place. I set the package down on the coffee table, and as I walked back to the door, I heard a phone ringing from somewhere inside the house. I froze. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. I took it out to look. Don't answer any calls that aren't from Marvin. I put my phone back and followed the sound of the phone ringing, poking my head into a few different rooms before I found it in the office. I walked over to the desk and looked at the caller ID. Incoming call from Jack. That was odd. I grabbed my phone to look at the message again. I was starting to get a little creeped out and decided I wouldn't answer just to be safe. And I left the house, remembering to lock the door as I left. Carpet, horror stories, spooky carpet. I've done a few more favors since Jack sent in. I drove a BMW to a random park in another city, only to get out and drive a different car back to Jack's house. He had me meet one of his employees at lunch, who then gave me a briefcase to deliver to the first house I'd gone to and told me he would know if I looked inside. On several occasions, he asked me to drive down that same house and stay with the guy, whose name was Julio, for a certain amount of time. In total, I've made about $3,500. Most recently, Jack asked me to stay in his house overnight. I woke up to a text message from him. I need you to spend the night at my house. I hadn't ever seen him in person, but I had talked to him on the phone a few times. He proceeded to tell me he would pay me $1,000 to spend the night at his house, provided that I followed a few rules. I drove to his house that evening. The driveway was empty, and it normally was, but the porch light was on. I walked up, unlocked the door, and went inside to lock it again. Everything in the house looked the same. Jack had told me over the phone that he would leave the list of rules on the dining room table. I set all of my stuff down in the living room, and my bags looked like garbage next to the fancy furniture in there. I wandered into the kitchen and then into the dining room. Sure enough, there was a piece of paper on the wooden table, held down by an empty glass. Lock the door when you come in. Only answer calls from Marvin. Don't turn on any faucets between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. Don't open the door for anyone, no matter who they say they are, after 10 p.m. If the door to the closet at the end of the hall is open, sleep in the library. If closed, sleep in any of the bedrooms. The gardener comes at midnight. If he starts knocking on the windows, hide. Turn on the TV and let it play static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Help yourself to anything in the fridge, smiley face. I'll pay you in the morning. Good night. I made sure to follow all the rules. To be honest, I was regretting my decision, but seeing as I was already here and I was getting paid, I decided to stay anyway. I figured as long as I followed all the rules, I'd be perfectly fine. Still, it felt a little odd. What was this? A haunted house? Nah. Nevertheless, I lounged around the house for a few hours, as I was planning on going to sleep around 9, since that's the time that all the weird stuff would begin to happen. At 8:50, I brushed my teeth using the faucet for the last time before 9. I checked the closet in the hallway, and upon seeing that it was open, I moved my stuff into the library and got ready to sleep on the couch. I locked the doors just in case, and laid on the couch, scrolling through my phone. I hadn't gotten any more messages from Jack, and I started to think up scenarios and reasons as to why he had such a strict, peculiar set of rules in the house. She's already forgotten her rule. Chat, do you know what rule she forgot? Do you know what rule she forgot? She forgot one. She forgot her rule. She did. I checked the closet in the hallway, and upon seeing that it was... Oh wait, I already read that one. I had dozed off at some point because at exactly 10:16 p.m. I was woken up by the doorbell ringing. I was about to go up and get it to check, but then I remembered the rule. Don't open the door for anyone, no matter who they say they are, after 10 p.m. I stayed on the couch, trying not to move, paranoid that they would hear even the slightest sound. It's the police! Open up! I didn't move. Hello? It's the police. Open up or we're coming in. I still didn't move, but I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. There was silence for a while after that. Then the doorbell rang again. Hey, it's Jack. Let me in. It sounded like Jack, but still, I didn't get up. He would have a key, wouldn't he? Why would he need me to let him in? This continued for almost a full hour. Different people would ring the doorbell, announce themselves, and then disappear when I didn't respond. I was finally able to fall asleep, and the gardener never came. When I woke up in the morning, I heard someone in the kitchen. I got up slowly and unlocked the door as quietly as possible, taking my phone with me and walking across the living room into the kitchen. I stopped at the entrance and peered in. It was Jack. He was standing in front of the stove, stirring something as the coffee machine brewed coffee on the counter behind him. Hey, good morning, he said when he saw me. Hi, I nervously replied. I hadn't seen him in person before, but he looked exactly like his pictures online. Scrambled eggs? He asked, motioning to the pan with a wooden spoon. Yeah, thanks, I replied, walking over to take the plate from him. I ate my breakfast and drank some coffee in silence. So, how was it? He asked. It was okay, nothing super freaky happened, I replied. Cool, he replied. There was an awkwardness. I think I'm gonna go now. I have class, I trailed off. I didn't, but I really wanted to get out of there. Oh no, yeah sure, I'll talk to you some other time, he replied. I grabbed my stuff, and as he walked me to my car, I could see him standing in the driveway, staring at me as I left. When I got home, I unpacked all my stuff and noticed I had still had the list with me. I sat on my bed and read it again. I felt my body tense up as I realized I forgot something. Turn on the TV and let it play static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Turn on the TV and let it play static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Do not forget to do this. I stared at the words on the page until they lost meaning. And besides me, my phone buzzed, snapping me back into reality. It was the $1,000 payment. I looked at the phone, and then back to my list. Maybe it wasn't important. As I was thinking this over, a text from Jack came in. I'm not in town right now. I should be back next week, so you're free from running any more errands for me until then. Just send the payment. Go do something fun. I stared at the message and read it again, and once more for good measure. I'm not in town right now. I thought back to this morning and how Jack was in his house, how he gave me breakfast. I'm not in town right now. Within minutes, a new text came in, this time from a number I didn't recognize. Did you forget to do something? The text was followed by a picture of Jack, or whoever this version of Jack was, standing in front of the TV. I didn't respond. Next came another picture. This one was outside of my house. It was followed by another text. Watch out. Spooky. There's a part 2. Part 2. This one was so long. This one's long. Okay. Part 2, part 2, part 2. Part 2. Part 2. Part 2. I didn't leave my house for almost an entire week. The only reason I didn't stay indoors for longer is that I had an important exam in one of my classes that I absolutely had to be present for. 1 second, I have to cough. Okay. That also didn't help with the anxiety I was feeling. As I drove to the campus, I kept my eyes glued to my surroundings, almost running 2 stop signs and a red light. I kept expecting Jack, or fake Jack, I suppose, to pop out randomly on the side of the road, or in the car next to me, or in the car behind me. I constantly glanced at my rearview mirror, trying to figure out if the black truck behind me had been there this whole time, or if it was different from the one I had seen 10 minutes ago. I hadn't told him where I went to school, so maybe he wouldn't know. Then again, I hadn't told him where I lived either, and he seemed to figure that out rather quickly. I hadn't texted the real Jack since the incident had happened. I didn't even know what I was supposed to say. Oops, I didn't follow all of your rules, and now there's a weird look-alike of yours running around the city. My plan, as foolish as it was to act as if all was well. I wasn't going to stir the pot by telling him I had already messed up, so instead I was going to wait until he realized that something was wrong. Hopefully, he wouldn't. I will admit that not telling him was more difficult than I had thought, and I had found myself constantly checking my phone for texts from Jack, but none appeared. I finished my exam that day, sure that I had failed due to my lack of focus, and drove back home where I found Julio standing in my driveway. He was looking down at his phone, and I attempted to keep driving down the street before he saw me, but I wasn't fast enough. He glanced and began walking toward my car as I slowly pulled into the driveway, locking my doors and trying to remain calm. Instead of shifting to park, I kept my foot on the brake and shifted it into reverse, fully ready in case I needed to make a quick getaway. I sat in the driver's seat, looking forward at my front door. I wondered for a second if I would be able to get inside and lock the door before Julio got to me. Suddenly, he leaned down and knocked on the window, making me jump. I turned to look at him and said nothing. "Roll your window down," he said, motioning me to lower the window. I pressed the button for a split second, making only a tiny crack of open space. It's not me you should be afraid of. I looked at him and glanced at my rear view mirrors, trying to see if any of my neighbors were outside, but they weren't, and I was all alone with no witnesses. "You messed up," he said, leaning against my car. "I told you to watch out, and you didn't. You managed to mess up the rules in one night. They always miss at least one." "They?" I looked up at him, but said nothing because I honestly had no clue what to say. "Get out of the car, we're going inside." He tapped his hand on the roof of my car and walked towards my front door. I thought about driving away, but I wasn't sure where I would go, and a part of me wanted to hear him out. So I found myself parking the car, turning off the engine, and letting Julio into my house. He took a seat on my couch and glanced around the living room. "This is fancy for a college student. You buy this with Jack's money?" he asked. I rolled my eyes as I stood in front of him. "Why did you want to come in?" "All right, touchy subject," he said, shrugging. "I need to talk to you about Jack." "Which Jack?" The one I've been talking to, or the one that appeared in the house? What? He snapped, leaning over and resting his elbow on his knees. What? What do you mean, the one that appeared in the house? Jack isn't back yet. I came here to tell you that you forgot to lock the door after your little house-sitting gig, which Jack won't be pleased about. He's very peculiar about this stuff. He's gotten rid of girls for much pettier stuff than this. I said nothing and stared at Julio when he stared back, waiting for me to explain myself. His use of the words "gotten rid of" made me nervous, and I wondered what he meant by that. Surely he wouldn't kill me over a mistake, right? Was there someone else in the house? He asked after a few seconds of silence. Jack. Jack was in the house that morning before I left. How do you suppose that happened? Because Jack isn't home from his trip yet. I shrugged, not really knowing what to say. Thank you for pets. Julio stood up, sighing in annoyance. Fine. You know what? I originally came over here to ask you for a share of the cash you got for your poor house-sitting job, but it seems to me that you're probably messed up more than I originally thought, so I'm just going to stay out of whatever this is. Good luck. He walked over and opened my front door, waving to me as he left, leaving me standing in my empty house. I ran to the door and locked it as soon as he was gone, and started to freak out once again. I thought about what I was going to do if Jack came back from his trip and found out that I had messed up. What if Julio was right and someone had broken into the house and robbed him? Maybe I just thought I saw Jack, but maybe it was some other stranger who looked like him. My mind was going a mile a minute as I tried to figure out what to do. I paced around my house for a few hours before I finally decided that I was going to drive back to Jack's house and make sure that no one had broken in. If they had, I would simply make an anonymous police report or something, because the only way he would never know that it was my fault would be if Julio snitched on me, which doesn't seem like he was planning on doing anymore. I made the drive over in silence, trying to control my breathing so I didn't have a meltdown on the highway. I pulled into the driveway and turned the engine off, but I couldn't work up the courage to get out of the car. I sat there for a few minutes, staring at the giant house, trying to force myself to unbuckle my seatbelt, open the door, and get out of the car. The house, which once looked impressive, now made me feel anxious and out of place. I couldn't stop myself from imagining all sorts of horrible scenarios that I could stumble upon once I opened the door. I thought about how many possible hiding places there were in a house that large. I don't know how long I sat there before I finally decided to get out of the car and walk towards the front door. I hesitated for a few seconds before taking a deep breath and pushing the door open. Only it didn't open, because it was locked. I assumed that Julio had probably locked it and looked for the key on my keychain. I unlocked the door and stepped into the living room, taking a look around. Everything looked normal enough. There was no signs of breaking and entering, or anything like that, and I was glad that Julio had come over and realized my mistake before someone else had. I closed the door behind me, this time double-checking that I locked it, and began to make my way further into the house. I went into the library first, which looked the same as it had when I left. Next, I made my way through the living room, glancing around to see if anything was out of place, but nothing was. I was starting to feel better now that I had confirmed that no one had broken in and ruined the place. Cat's here. That feeling was short-lived, however, when I walked into the kitchen. It was a complete mess. Both the fridge and the freezer were wide open, all the containers of food emptied out. There were empty boxes of frozen foods tossed inside of the freezer and on the kitchen floor. There were a few trays of meat that were just laying on the table and the counters, and some of the red juice from the meats had been spilled inside the fridge and now dripped onto the floor. I noticed that while there hadn't been much food in there in the first place, it was all gone. As I got closer to the fridge, I realized that it wasn't cool, and the light inside the fridge wasn't working either. I assumed that whoever ate all the food also unplugged it for some odd reason. I stepped over to an empty carton of orange juice and an empty crate of eggs as I made my way toward the stove, where I found stacks of unwashed pans. One of them was still hot, meaning that it was only recently taken off the burner. There were eggshells all over the counter, and I thought back to that morning when Jack, or whoever that was, had made eggs for breakfast. I walked back out of the kitchen, careful not to step on the mess that littered the floor, and made my way down the hallway. Hello, Starfound. Welcome, welcome. I hope you're having a nice, comfy night. I spotted the door at the end of the hall, and this time it was closed. As I continued to walk down the hall, I couldn't help but notice how eerily quiet it was in the house. I couldn't even hear the sound of the heater running. As I passed the thermostat in the hallway, I saw that it wasn't working. The screen was off, and there was nothing on it like it had been turned off or something. I leaned forward and pressed a few of the buttons, and none of them worked. I poked my head into the study, but that was also empty, although I did see that the landline had been used recently, and whoever used it didn't put it back. The handheld part was hanging off the side of the desk, and I stepped in, grabbing the phone and holding it up to my ear, but there was only silence. I put it back and followed the cord with my eyes. It was connected to the wall, but it seemed like there was no power in the house, which explained the refrigerator and the thermostat. I walked out of the study and headed down the hall again, but I froze in my tracks when I noticed that the door at the end of the hall was open now. Someone was in the house. I reached into my back pocket and grabbed my phone, checking to see if maybe I had missed a text from Jack, but I had no signal inside the house. I held my phone in my hand anyway, hoping I'd pick up enough signal to call for help, and began to back away from the door, listening carefully for any footsteps or noises that would let me know where the intruder was. As I spun around, I found myself face to face with Jack, or whoever it was. I knew he was the same man I had seen that morning, but I had no idea who he really was. Oh, and I have to cough again. Okay, sorry, I said, startled. Which one are you? He asked, squinting at me. He was dressed in a stained gray t-shirt and an old pajama bottom that looked like they had been purchased 30 years ago. What? I asked. You're the new one, right? The one from the other day? You're the one who forgot to turn the television on. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I thought I was being careful. I didn't mean to. I stopped talking as he started laughing. Sorry, he asked, grinning. I should be thanking you. Who are you? I asked him. I stared at his face, and he looked exactly like Jack, but I couldn't figure out why he was here when he said he was still in the chip. I'm Jack, he replied as if he were stating the obvious. But Jack said he wouldn't be back for a few days. His expression changed and he narrowed his eyes at me. Did he tell you when he would be back? The exact date? I shook my head, confused and thinking about how I was going to get past this man and get out of the house. But you can ask him, right? I don't know. He hasn't contacted me in a few days. I was hoping it wouldn't be that bad. Can you explain to me what's going on? I asked him. You shouldn't have come back here. Something felt off to me, and chills shook my entire body. Part of me regretted not going with my original plan of acting like everything was okay. I didn't want to stay in the house any longer, and there was really nothing I could do anyway. Besides, I was getting a bad feeling from this guy claiming to be Jack. I slowly stepped past him, glancing back behind me as I continued to walk into the living room and toward the front door. Hello, chappers. And chew pasta. I found myself walking faster and faster until I was basically running and throwing myself at the front door. I couldn't help but shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen if I stayed in the house for any longer. I unlocked the front door, but just as I was about to open it, I heard the lock slide back into place. It only sounded a lot louder than usual. I jiggled the doorknob and realized that while the doorknob wasn't locked, something else was, and it was keeping me from opening the door. I began to freak out as I pulled on the door urgently, trying to get it to open, but something was keeping it shut. What the heck? I said out loud. I glanced toward the hall as I heard another noise, but I quickly realized that it was the sound of air flowing through the vents. It seemed like the power was back on somehow, and some sort of security system had activated at the same time. I looked down at my phone, and not only did I have a signal, but I had 3 messages from Jack. I'm back. What happened? I know you're in the house. I looked around the room, trying to find him or any security cameras in the room that would have been alerting him of my presence. I didn't see any and grabbed my phone to text him back. Are you here? I held my phone in my hands as I made my way back toward the hallway to find the other Jack that I had seen earlier, if he even was the other Jack. Maybe this was all the same person, he was just messing with me for some reason. A part of me thought that perhaps I deserved all of this for doing this in the first place. I mean, why was I so quick to agree to run random errands for a random man that I had never met? Sure, I needed the money, but going to a stranger's house has got to be on the list of top 10 dumbest things you could ever do, especially considering the fact that no one knew where I was, and I didn't have a weapon to defend myself. Hello, Boku Doku. Welcome, look. I hope you're having a nice comfy night, or reading spooky stories. Okay, I stood in front of the closed door for a second before making my way over to the window. I tried to open it, but the security system had locked the window shut as well. I thought about breaking the window open, and I grabbed a sturdy-looking vase. I took a few steps back, and then threw it at the window as hard as I could. The vase shattered as it made contact with the window, but the window was fine, unscratched. The only way I was getting out of here was through the door, but first I had to disarm the security system somehow. I walked back to where I had left Jack, but he was gone and nowhere to be found. Jack? I called, my voice echoing throughout the house. The door at the end of the hall was closed once again, and I began to walk toward it, peeking into each room as I passed, but there was no one else in the house. As I reached the door, my phone buzzed in my hand. You were supposed to follow the rules. I stood in front of the door, trying to work up the courage to open it and see what was in the room. I know, I'm sorry. I came back to make sure everything was okay. I reached out and grabbed the doorknob, taking deep breaths. The buzzing in my hand startled me, and I ignored it as I turned the doorknob and pulled the door open. I stood in the threshold at the top of a wooden staircase. Below it was a badly lit basement. I walked down the stairs, glancing at my phone. You should have stayed away. You're really going to regret this. I didn't reply, and kept walking until I was at the bottom of the stairs. While I wasn't sure what I was expecting, it wasn't the normal-looking basement apartment that I had stumbled into. I'd found Jack sitting on the couch against one of the walls. He was reading a magazine and glanced up when he heard me step off the stairs. What are you doing? He shot to his feet as he shouted at me. The door locked. I can't get out, I replied. You're so stupid, he exclaimed, walking over to me. That's rude. How was I supposed to know doors would lock when the power came back on? You weren't supposed to come back, he shouted, his face turning an angry shade of red. I wanted to make sure everything was fine, I replied. Who cares? You got $1,000 for house sitting. Why didn't you take it and leave? Why are you so angry? Why are you even here? You're clearly not Jack, I snapped, annoyed. How do you know? He asked in a calm tone. What? How do you know I'm not Jack? I look like the pictures you've seen, don't I? Yeah, but Jack is on vacation, I replied. How do you know? He repeated. What are you talking about? Have you ever met Jack in person? Have you ever talked to him on the phone? Video call? Anything other than a text message every few days? I didn't reply, staring at him. He was right. He did look exactly like the photos I had seen on the Tinder profile. That's what I thought. He replied to my silence. What are you saying exactly? I asked as I heard my phone buzz once again. How do you know the person that you've been talking to is a real person? As a matter of fact, how do you know that it's not me? Maybe this was my plan all along, to lure you here. At that point, it finally hit me. He was right. I didn't know if I was talking to a real person. All that I was doing was random favors for someone with an internet profile who wanted to pay me money to do these things for some reason. I guess I'd always felt like there was something off about a sugar daddy who was willing to pay someone to do some things other than having sex, but I needed the money too badly to spend too much time questioning it. I was feeling even more scared now. My palms were cold and sweaty as I stood there, waiting for him to do something. I could run back upstairs, but I didn't think I was fast enough to get out of here and to find something to jam the door with, keep him downstairs. It's a spooky story. I took a shaky, deep breath as I tried my hardest to not make it seem like I was scared. If Jack was dangerous, I didn't want to alert him of my plans to try and run. After a few seconds of silence, I glanced down at my phone to read the most recent text, but there were no new notifications. Thank you for pets. Average Tinder story. True. That wasn't your phone, Jack said, breaking the silence. I looked up at him and glanced at the phone sitting on a nearby table. Suddenly, he jumped toward me as I attempted to jump my way out of the way. But I was too slow. I saw Jack grab my arms and my phone fell out of my hands, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was on the living room couch and Jack was standing above me looking down. What happened? I asked. I attempted to sit up, but I noticed I was incredibly dizzy and my left arm felt sore when I tried to prop myself up. I remember Jack grabbing me earlier, and I figured he had gripped my arm too tight and it must have bruised in the process. You're finally up. Good, he said. I slowly managed to sit up, wincing as I put my weight on my left arm. I looked up at Jack, who was now standing a few feet away, with a bandage wrapped around his right bicep. What happened? I asked, looking at the bandage, noticing that there was blood seeping through. You really shouldn't have come back. I tried to shift my position on the couch and winced in pain as I put my weight on my left arm again. I turned to look at it, trying to see if I had injuries, and I noticed that I was also wrapped in a bandage similar to Jack's. What happened? I repeated, looking down at my arm. I slowly reached over and started to unwrap the bandage until it came off, and I was left staring at a crudely done stitch on the inside of my bicep. What is this? I snapped, looking at Jack. I'm sorry, Ivy, but you really shouldn't have come back. Although, I'm kind of glad you did. I really didn't want to do this, but I need to get out of here. He began to back away from me, heading toward the front door. I watched as he easily opened it, and wondered how he disabled the lock and if there had been one to activate in the first place. He stepped out of the door and turned back to look at me. Good luck. I helped you out a bit while you were out, he said, motioning toward my phone, which he had set down on the couch next to me. I stood up and went after him. Surprisingly, he didn't try to run or back up, and simply stood about a foot away from the front door watching me. As I attempted to step outside, a stabbing pain erupted in my left arm, traveling through the rest of my body until I felt like I was being stabbed everywhere at once. I fell to the floor, crying out in pain. Once I was back in the house, the pain went away, and he laid on the floor shaking in the aftermath as I stared up at Jack. What did you do to me? I asked. I had to get out. It's been 8 months. I'm sorry. You were just the first to come back this time. I'm sure you're a good person, but I'm sorry. I can't be here. You're just going to leave me here? I shouted. Julia will come by to give you food, and by the way, don't try to cut that thing out of your arm. This place is covered in cameras. If you do anything suspicious, Julia will see you, and he won't hesitate to stop you. I learned that the hard way. I didn't know what to say, and I stood there in shock as I watched Jack walk over to my car and get in it, starting the engine and disappearing down the street. I finally shut the front door and locked it, turning back to face the empty house. I glanced at my phone, which was still on the couch, and remembered what Jack said before he left. I walked over, trying not to move my arm too much as I picked it up and turned it on. My Tinder profile was open. All I only it had been changed, and on my profile bio said, "Looking for a sugar baby, $700 weekly, no sex." On the table next to it, there was a list of house-sitting rules similar to the ones that I had found on the day that I'd been there. At the bottom of the page, there was a lime green sticky note that read, "Sorry, I hope you're able to get out soon. Don't worry. Maybe you won't be here for long. They almost always forget one of the rules. Good luck, Jack." Wow. Thank you for the pet, Stellan. My crown. I'm gonna take a big sippy. Naked. Trapped in the streamer house. We'll do a few more. These are fun. I'm having fun. I hope you're all having fun too. You're sad. I'm sorry. You can have the crown for a little bit. Naked head. You're naked. I'm naked. We're all naked. Thank you for pets. So Reddit has this like related posts thing, and there's like a bunch that are linking to relationship advice. Subreddits. Good for pets. True. Thank you for pets. Let's read this one. See how long it is. It's pretty long. This one looks really good though. Fighting strong. Good. That's all anyone could ever ask of you, is to do your best. Don't trick your partner into entering a cursed house and trapping them inside. True. Big true. Okay. We will read this one. Every night, no matter what the weather, something walks down our street whistling softly. You can only hear it if you're in the living room or in the kitchen when they walk by, and it always starts at exactly 3:03. The sound starts faint, somewhere near the beginning of the lane near the Carson place, or toward the middle of the street, so the whistling moves past us before fading away in the direction of the cul-de-sac. When I was younger, my sister and I would sneak into the kitchen some nights to listen. Mom and Dad didn't like that, and we'd catch heck if they found us. But they were never too hard on us, since we were always stuck to the one big rule: don't try to look at whatever was whistling. My neighborhood is a funny place. I've lived here since I was 6, and I love it. The houses are small, but well kept, good-sized yards, and plenty of places to roam. There are lots of other kids here my age. I turned 13 back in October. We grew up together and would always play foursquare in the cul-de-sac or roam around from back porch to back porch in the summer. This is a good place to grow up. I'm old enough to see it. And there's only 2 strange things here. The night whistling and the good luck. It's car, hand hook, door, handman. True. Pasta. The whistling never bothered me much, like I said. I couldn't even hear it from my bedroom, but Mom and Dad don't like talking about it, so I have to stop asking questions. My dad is a strong guy, tall and calm. He has an accent since he moved to the US as a kid. His family, my grandparents, they're from the islands. That's what they call it. My dad, the only time he isn't so calm is if the Whistler comes up. He talks a little quicker then, eyes move faster, and he tells us not to think about it so much, and to always remember the one rule, the big rule. Don't try to look outside when the Whistler goes past. Not that we could look away if we wanted. See, there are shutters on the inside of every window, thick pieces of heavy canvas that pull down from the top and latch to the bottom of the window frame. Each latch even has a small lock, about the size of what you'd find on a diary. My dad locks those shutters every night before we all go to bed and keeps the key in his room. My mom, I don't know what she thinks about the whistling. I've seen her out in the living room before at 3:03 when the sound starts. I could see her if I cracked my door open just an inch to peek. She's not out there often, but at least I haven't caught her much. But once or twice a month I think she sits out there on her big red couch just listening. The Whistler has the same tune every night. It's cheerful. Da. Wait, I guess I should be whistling. No whistling. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Remember how I said there were two odd things about where I live? Well, besides our night whistler, everyone in my neighborhood is really lucky. It's hard to explain, and Dad doesn't like us talking about this part much, either. But good things just seem to happen to people around here a lot. Usually it's small, like winning a radio contest, or getting an unexpected promotion at work, or finding some arrowheads buried in the yard. You know, the authentic kind. Wow. Booba. I like it. The weather is pretty good and there's no crime and everyone's gardens bloom extra bright in the fall. A million little blessings I've heard my mom say about living here. But the main reason we stay here, why we moved here in the first place, is my sister Nola. She was born very sick, something with her lungs. We couldn't even bring her home when she was born, only visit her in the hospital. She was so small, I remember, small even compared to the other babies. A machine had to breathe for her. Don't look at the catboy. Don't do it. We moved into our house here to be closer to the hospital. As soon as we moved here, Nola started getting better. The doctors couldn't figure it out. They chalked it up to whatever they were doing, but we could all tell they were just confused. But my parents knew, even I knew, Nola getting better was just another one of the million little blessings we got for living in our neighborhood. So that's why we stayed here even after we found out, for every small miracle that happens here every day. Now and then, some bad things happen, but they only happen if you look for the Whistler. See, our neighborhood has a welcoming committee. They show up with macaroni casserole and a gift basket and a manila folder whenever someone new moves in. They're very friendly. 4 people showed up when we moved in 7 years ago. The committee made small talk, gave me a Snickers bar, and took turns holding Nola. It was her first week out of the hospital, so they were extra careful. No cheese. Then the committee asked to speak to my parents in private, so I was sent to my room where I still managed to hear nearly every word. The welcoming committee told my parents about how nice the neighborhood was. Really exceptionally. Hard to explain. Kind of nice. Thank you for hearts. And then they told my parents about the even harder to explain whistling that happened every morning at 3:03. Thank you for pets. And ended at the tick of 3:05. The group, our new neighbors, warned my parents that the whistling was quiet and would never harm or hurt us, as long as we didn't look for what was making the sound. Thank you, Bokudoku. The part they stressed, and I pushed my ear into the door, straining to hear them. People who went looking for the whistler had their luck change, sometimes tragically. A black cloud would hang over anyone that looked. Anything could go wrong. Anything that could go wrong would. The manila envelope that the committee brought over contained newspaper clippings and stories about car crashes and ruined lives, public deaths and freak accidents. Not everyone dies, I heard the head of the committee tell my dad, but life goes out of them, even if they live. There's no light in them ever again, no presence. You're torturing me. Let me sippy. Prep for uwu mode. This path east west, and I pushed my wait, no, I already read the part. My mom, I could tell she wasn't taking it seriously. She kept asking if this was some prank they play on their neighbors. At one point my mom got angry, accused the committee of trying to scare us out of our new home, asked them if they were racist on account of my dad being from the islands. My dad calmed her down, told her he could tell our new neighbors were sincere since they were just trying to help us. He explained that growing up hearing these kinds of stories from his mom, and that he knew there were strange things that walked among us. Some of those strange things were good, and some of those were bad, but most were just different. After the committee left, Dad went on to the hardware store. He bought the canvas blinds and the latches and the locks and installed them on every window in the house after dinner. That first night in a new house, I crept out of my room at 3 a.m., only to find Dad awake, sitting in the living room couch, holding my baby sister. My dad held up a finger in a shush motion, but patted the couch next to him. I sat and we waited. At exactly 3:03, we heard the whistling. Da-da, da-da-dum, da-da, da-da-dum. It came and went, just like our neighbor said. The whistling returns each night, and we never work, and we enjoy a million little blessings every day. Noah breathes on her own, and she's grown into a strong, clever girl. My dad even joined a welcoming committee. We don't get new neighbors very often. Why would anyone want to leave? But when a new family moves in, my dad and the committee bring them macaroni casserole, a gift basket, and the manila folder. I can always tell by the look on my dad's face when he comes back if the family took the committee seriously or if we'd be getting a new neighbor again very soon. Not long ago, a family moved in directly next to us. The previous owner, Mrs. Maddie, passed away at age 105. She lived a good, long life. Our new neighbors seemed like they had just fit in just fine. They believed the welcoming committee and took my dad's advice about walking shutters since they had a young child of their own. Whatever newspaper clippings were in that manila envelope, whatever evidence, my dad never let us see. But I imagine it must have been awfully convincing since our neighbors got along with no issues for the first month. They did remember. My throat's drying up so fast. So I think my cat's gonna come and say hello. Hi, cat. Cat, kitty cat. I'll sleepy again. Yeah, reading. Okay. One night when our new neighbors had to leave town, they sent their son Holden to stay with us. He was 12, a year under me in school. I didn't know him well before that night, but as soon as his parents dropped him off after dinner, I could tell it was going to be a bad time. Do you know who was always out there whistling every night? Holden asked the moment the adults left the room. The three of us were sitting in the den, some Disney movie playing idly on the television. My sister and I exchanged a glance. We don't talk about that, I said. I think it's that weirdo that lives in the big yellow house in the corner, Holden said. Mr. Tolls? My sister asked. No way, he's really nice. Holden shrugged. Must be a psycho killer then. Nola tensed. We don't talk about it, I repeated. Let's go to my room and play Nintendo. We spent the next few hours playing games, eating popcorn and then watching movies. A typical sleepover, but I can see Holden was getting antsy. After my parents had wished us a good night, walked to the blinds and gone to bed, Holden stood up from his beanbag and walked over to where Noah and I were sitting on my bed. Have you ever tried walking? He asked. It's nearly time. Like most sleepovers, we'd conveniently ignored any suggestion of a bedtime. I was shocked to see who was white. It was almost 3 a.m. I sighed. We don't. I can't even try to look outside because my dad walks the blinds every night and hides the key, he continued, ignoring me. Good night, Boku Doku. I hope you sleep well and have sweet dreams. Thank you so much for hanging out. Sleep well, don't have any spooky dreams. Yum yum yum. Slurp, slurp, slurp. Okay. Holding Gwind. Your dad walks. Oh, I think Umo's over. Nah. Holden grinned. Your dad locks the blinds, yeah, but he doesn't hide the key. He keeps it right on his normal keychain. So, I asked, worried I already knew what he was going to say next, because I had noticed that my dad didn't bother hiding the key anymore after all these years, because he knew we took it seriously. So after your dad locked up, before your parents went to bed, I went to the bathroom, and on my way I may have peeked into the room, and I may have seen your dad's keychain on the nightstand, and I maybe went and borrowed the key to the blinds. Hello, Missy. Hello, Finbright. Missy. What? Let me shout you out. Let me put me down. Wow. Hello. Wow. You're playing Just Chatting. Did you have a nice dream, Macy? And hello everyone, we're reading spooky stories. You did. What kind of stuff did you do? Lots of new faces. Hello everyone. Welcome. I'm the comfy kitty cat prince and I'm reading spooky stories. But my voice is starting to get scratchy. But thank you again for the read, Macy. I hope you're having a nice comfy night. I hope everyone is nice and comfy. We're in the middle of a story called Something Walks Whistling Past My House Every Night. And it's about somebody that whistles outside at night and you're not supposed to look at him. We were playing Power Wash Sim. Nice! Power Wash Sim is super amazing and really satisfying. Very comfy. Hope you had lots of fun, Macy. And good morning, Kyuta. Thank you for the pets. Hello. But yeah, the story is about a person that whistles outside and you're not supposed to look at him. And some stuff. This one's kind of long, actually. Holden shrugged. You can check if you want. Just open your parents' door and look and you'll see his keychain right there on the nightstand. Stay here, I told both of them. Don't move a muscle. I hurried over to my parents' room, but hesitated at the door. If Holden wasn't lying, my dad would be angry. Beyond angry. I was scared thinking about it, but more scared of an open window with the whistler right outside. I opened the door, barely an inch, and looked in, but it was too dark to see. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the room. The stream's been really fun and going very well. And yay, I'm glad you're here, Kyo. I hope I can help you sleep. 2 steps into the dark room. Oh wait. Yeah. I opened the door barely an inch and looked in, but it was too dark to see. Taking a deep breath, I walked inside. Two steps into the dark, I froze. The whistling started, and I could hear it clearly from my parents' room. I never realized, but they must have heard the sound every night since we moved into the house. They never told us. I don't think I could have slept through it. I stood there, listening to the whistling come closer, unsure whether I should turn on a light or call out for my dad. Soft sounds from the living room brought me back to reality. "Nola!" I yelled, running out of my parents' room. Holden and Nola were standing near the front door next to a window. Holden wasn't lying. I could see him fumbling with the lock on one of the blinds. I heard a click. He did have the key. Holden let out a quick laugh. Nola stood next to him, hunched up, afraid but maybe curious. The whistling was right outside her house now. I think I made a sound, called out. I can't remember. Time felt frozen, clock hands nailed to the face, but I found myself moving. I'm not fast. I've never been athletic. Somehow, though, I covered the space between myself and Nola in a moment. My eyes were locked on her, but I heard Holden pull the blind all the way down so it could release. I heard the snap of it start to raise, and I heard the whistling just on the other side of the window. But I had my arms around Nola, and I turned us so she was facing away from the window. At the same time, I jammed my eyes shut. The blind whipped open. The whistling stopped. I felt Nola shaking in my arms. "Don't look, okay?" I told her. "Don't turn around." We were positioned so that she was facing back toward the hallway and I was facing the window. My eyes were still closed. I felt her nod into my shoulder. I reached out with the arm not holding Nola and tried to touch Hayden. My hand brushed against his arms. He was shaking worse than Nola. "Holden?" I asked. Silence. I reached past him and gingerly felt for the window. Eyes still sealed shut. The glass was cold against my fingertips, colder than it should have been for the time of year. I moved my hand up to the window, searching for the string to the blind. The glass began to get warmer the further I reached, and there was a gentle hum feeding back into my fingertips. I tried not to think about what might be on the other side of the window. Finally, I touched the string and yanked the blind shut. I opened my eyes. In the dim light leaking from the kitchen, I could make out Holden, pale and small, staring at the now closed window. "Holden?" I asked again. He turned toward me and he screamed. Everything became a flurry of motion. Lights sparked to life in the hall, then the living room. My parents' footsteps thudded across the hardwood floor. I didn't turn to look back at them. My eyes were glued to Holden. He was pale. He had bit his lip so hard there was a thin red line of blood running down his chin, and he'd wet himself. "What happened?" my dad asked from out behind me. I managed to swivel away from Holden and looked back. He looked. I'd never seen my dad scared before, but I saw it in that night. In that moment, an old, ugly terror stitched on his face, a parent's fear. "Just Holden?" he mouthed to me. I nodded yes. My dad let out a breath. He looked so relieved I nearly expected him to cheer, but then he turned to Holden and my dad's face changed. I wonder if he felt bad for feeling good that Holden was the only one that looked. There was a knock on the door. We all froze. Holden whimpered. "Don't answer it," my mom said. She stood at the threshold of the hall. I'd always thought she was a skeptic, and just humored my dad about the windows and the whistler, but that night we were all believers. I noticed that both of my parents had held baseball bats they must have taken from their bedroom. The knock came again, a little louder this time. "Please don't open the door," Holden whispered. My dad walked over to him, hugged him close. "We won't," my dad promised, still holding his bat. "Nothing is coming in here tonight." Dun, dun, dun. This time the knocking was loud enough to rattle the door. Holden screamed again and Nola clutched her arms around my neck. My mom came over and knelt down next to us, wrapping my sister and me close. "Call the police," my mom whispered to my dad. The knocking instantly stopped. My dad looked over his shoulder at us. "Do you think—" He was cut off by the frantic knocking that trailed off to a polite tap-tap. "Police," said something from the other side of the door. The voice from outside sounded exactly like my mom, like a parrot repeating the words back to her. "Police. Call the police. Police." My mom pulled us closer. "Police. Police. 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 Please stop," I heard her whisper. "I don't think calling them will help," my dad said. "How will we know when they're the ones at the door?" The knocking came back harder than before. The door shook, then it stopped. After a long moment, I heard the knocking again, but it was coming from our back door. We all turned together toward the back door, but the knocking immediately returned to the front door. Front to back, and back to front. Loud, then quiet, then loud again. Suddenly the sound was coming from both doors at once. Big, heavy blows like a sledgehammer. Then something started rapping against the side of the windows in the house. And then the walls. It was like we were living inside of a drum with a dozen people trying to play at once. Or we were a turtle and something was attempting to claw us out of our shell. "Stop!" Holden yelled. The knocking died. "I won't tell," Holden said, staring at the door. "I promise I won't tell anyone what I saw. Please just go away." We waited for nearly a minute, and then we heard it. A soft tap, 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 coming from the window Holden had looked through earlier. Holden started to cry, sobbing like a prisoner watching gallows being built outside their cell. My dad held him, brushed his hair, but never lied to him, never told him things would be okay. The tapping at the window went on for the rest of the night. We huddled together in the living room for I don't know how long. Eventually, my mom tried to take us kids into my room, while my dad stayed to watch the door. But the second we moved into my bedroom, the knocking came back so loud it was impossible to ignore. I was afraid the door couldn't take it. We went back to the living room and the knocking stopped. Only the tap, tap, tap on the window remained. None of us slept that night. The tapping stopped at around 7 a.m. That's the time the sun comes up here. We waited another 2 hours before my dad opened it. The blinds from one window. He made us go all the way back into our parents' bedroom first. I heard him open the door, then come back in. "Okay," he told us. "It's done." Holden's parents came back around lunchtime. My mom and dad walked Holden over to this house and they all went inside for quite a while. Noel and I watched from the window. She stuck to me the whole day, right at my side, sometimes holding my hand. When my parents came back, they looked grim, but wouldn't tell us what they said to Holden's family. It was Sunday, so we all spent the day together, ordered pizza and watched movies. That night, everyone slept in my room. Nola and my mom in the bed with me, my dad in a chair he'd pulled over. There was no knocking that night, or any night since. We didn't see much of Holden or his parents for the rest of that week, but by Thursday there was a moving truck in their driveway. Noel and I watched them packing up the whole afternoon after school. What sticks with me the most is how tired Holden and his parents looked. All three had the same pallor, grim mouths and lightless eyes. Even from across the street I could tell something was very, very wrong. Holden and his family were gone before sunset. I remember what the original welcoming committee said to my parents when we moved in. Not everyone who looks at the Whistler dies, but even those that live will have the lights go out of them and the rest of their lives are full of misfortune, a million little tragedies. I think Holden's parents must have looked either to comfort him if he didn't, I think Holden's parents must have looked either to comfort him if they didn't believe, or share the burden if they did. I watched Nola some days, happy and young and alive, and I wonder if I had been slower if she had looked out the window that night. Would I have looked too, to comfort her, to share that burden? I'm glad I don't have to find out. We still live in that house, in that neighborhood. We still hear our whistler walking past every night. The blessings, the luck, the good things here are too good to leave, but we're careful. We don't have friends over to spend the night anymore, and my dad hides the key to the blinds very, very well. Not that I've gone looking. Some things you just don't need to look for. And that was it. End of the story. That was pretty good. I'll do one more. One more. I'll do one more story. Let me get like a decently long one. This one's not too long. This one's good. They saw him playing his skin flute. What's a skin flute, huh? Huh? No playing your skin flute. No. Okay. This one is titled, My Job is Watching a Woman Trapped in a Room. Oh wait, why does it say series? How long is this? There is a part 2 of it. How long is it? Part 1, part 2, part 3. Maybe we should save this one for next time. Yeah, there's a part 4. We're not gonna do this. We're gonna bookmark this one. I don't want to read 4 parts. Okay. This one seems good. Scrolling. Okay, this one is titled, I'm a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service, and I have some stories to tell. I wasn't sure where else to post these stories, so I'd figured I'd share them here. I've been an SAR officer for a few years now. SAR meaning search and rescue, I assume. And along the way, I've seen some things that I think you guys will be interested in. Don't be dizzy. Don't do it. Don't do it. I have a pretty good track record for finding missing people. Most of the time, they just wander off the path or slip down a small cliff, and they can't find their way back. The majority of them have heard the old stay where you are thing, and they don't wander far, but I've had 2 cases where that didn't happen. Both bother me a lot, and I use them as motivation to search even harder on the missing person cases I get called on. The first was a little boy who was out berry picking with his parents. He and his sister were together, and both of them went missing around the same time. Their parents lost sight of them for a few seconds, and in that time both kids apparently wandered off. When their parents couldn't find them, they called us, and we came out to search the area. We found the daughter pretty quickly, and when we asked where her brother was, she told us that he'd been taken away by the bear man. She said that he gave her berries and told her to stay quiet, that he wanted to play with her brother for a while. The last she saw of her brother, he was riding on the shoulders of the bear man and seemed calm. Of course, our first thought was an abduction, but we never found a trace of another human being in that area. The little girl was also inconsistent. insistent that he wasn't a normal man, but was tall and covered with hair like a bear, and that he had a weird face. We searched that area for weeks. It was one of the longest calls I've ever been on, but we never found a single trace of that kid. There was a young woman who was out hiking with her mom and grandpa. According to the mother, her daughter had climbed up a tree to get a better view of the forest, and she'd never come back down. They waited at the base of the tree for hours, calling her name before they called for help. Again, we searched everywhere, and we never found a trace of her. I have no idea where she could have possibly gone, because neither her mother nor grandpa saw her again. Okay, this is number 2. This is a few really short stories, I guess. A few times I've been out on my own searching with a canine, and they've tried to lead me up straight cliffs. Not hills, not even rock faces, straight, sheer cliffs with no possible handholds. It's always baffling, and in those cases we usually find the person on the other side of the cliff, or miles away from where the canine has led us. I'm sure there's an explanation, but it's sort of strange. One particularly sad case involved the recovery of a body. A 9-year-old girl fell down an embankment and got impaled on a dead tree at the base. It was a complete freak accident, but I'll never forget the sounds her mother made when we told her what had happened. She saw the body bag being loaded into the ambulance, and she let out the most haunting, heartbroken wail I've ever heard. It was like her whole life was crashing down around her, and part of her had died with her daughter. I heard from another SAR officer that she killed herself a few weeks after it happened. She couldn't live with the loss of her daughter. That wasn't very spooky, that was just morbid. I was teamed up with another SAR officer because we'd received reports of bears in the area. We were looking for a guy who hadn't come home from a climbing trip when he was supposed to, and we ended up having to do some serious climbing to get to where we figured he'd be. We found him trapped in a small crevice with a broken leg. It was not pleasant. He had been there for almost 2 days, and his leg was very obviously infected. We were able to get him into a chopper, and I heard from one of the EMTs that the guy was absolutely inconsolable. He kept talking about how he had been doing fine, and when he got into the top, a man had been there. He said the guy had no climbing equipment, and he was wearing a parka and ski pants. He walked up to the guy, and when the guy turned around, he said he had no face. It was just blank. He freaked out and ended up trying to get off the mountain too fast, which is why he'd fallen. He said he could hear the guy all night climbing down the mountain and letting out these horrible muffled screams. That story bothered the heck out of me. I'm glad I wasn't there to hear it. One of the scariest things I've ever had happen to me involved this search for a young woman who had gotten separated from her hiking group. We were out until late at night because the dogs had picked up her scent. When we found her, she was curled up under a large rotted log. She was missing her shoes and pack, and she was clearly in shock. She didn't have any injuries, and we were able to get her to walk back to us to the base ops. Along the way, she kept looking behind us and asking why that big man with black eyes was following us. We couldn't see anyone, so we just wrote it off as some sort of weird symptom of shock. We couldn't see anyone. But the closer we got to base, the more agitated the woman got. She kept asking me to tell him to stop making faces at her. At one point she stopped and turned around and started yelling into the forest, saying that she wanted him to leave her alone. She wasn't going to go with him, she said, and she wouldn't give us to him. We finally got her to keep moving, but we started hearing these weird noises coming from all around us. It was like coughing, but more rhythmic and deeper. It was almost insect-like. I don't really know how else to describe it. When we were within sight of base ops, the woman turns to me. Her eyes are about as wide as I can imagine a human could open. He touches my shoulder and she touches my shoulder and says, he says to tell you to speed up. He doesn't like looking at the scar on your neck. I have a very small scar on the base of my neck, but it's mostly hidden under my collar, and I have no idea how this woman saw it. Right after she says it, I hear that weird coughing right up in my ear. I just about jumped out of my skin. I hustled her to ops, trying not to show her how freaked out I was, but I have to say I was really happy when we left the area that night. This is the last one I'll tell, and it's probably the weirdest story I have. Now, I don't know if this is true in every SAR unit, but in mine, it's sort of an unspoken regular thing we run into. You can try asking about it with other SAR officers, but even if they know what you're talking about, they probably won't say anything about it. We've been told not to talk about it by our superiors, and at this point we've all gotten so used to it that it doesn't even seem weird anymore. On just about every case where we're really far into the wilderness, I'm talking 30 to 40 miles, at some point we'll find a staircase in the middle of the woods. It's almost like if you took the stairs in your house, cut them out, and put them in the forest. I asked about it the first time I saw some, and the other officer just told me not to worry about it, that it was normal. Everyone I saw said the same thing. I wanted to go check them out, but as I was told, very empathetically, I should never go near any of them. I just sort of ignore them now when I run into them because it happens so frequently. The stairs. The stairs. And there's one more. I think my voice is about done though. Yeah. I think my voice is a little bit too much speaking, too much reading. Do you hear the wind outside? It's windy. Spooky hours. Okay. Okay, I'll wrap it up. I'll wrap up the stream. Thank you for pets. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for sparkles and for hearts. Spooky smooches. Oh. Yeah, thank you all for hanging out and spending time with me. Thank you, thank you. Did they really scare you? Did they scare you? Were you really, really, really afraid? Were you spooked? Spooky. Spooky. Don't pee your pants. No. No. Hello, Holy Celery. Thank you for all the thingies. Welcome, welcome. Oh, my voice is scratchy. Hey. Hey, cat. What are you doing? What are you doing, cat? Yeah. 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 Thank you all for watching. Hey, spending time with me. Tomorrow I'm playing Lost in Vivo. If you would like to see my schedule or receive pings when I go live, join my Discord. Yeah, Lost in Vivo tomorrow, Friday. Tomorrow I'm also gonna try to get more plushies. Golden Cream, you're late. We're ending. Hello, I thought he was cute. But hello, I hope you're having a nice comfy night. I hope you all have a nice comfy night. We're ending Golden Cream. It's ending time. It's ending time. Let's see if there's any small ASMR streamers that we could read. There's so many recordings. Like no one is streaming for 20 hours straight. 45 hours straight. 16 hours straight. There's so many bots. Yeah, summer category. I don't think we're gonna read anyone tonight. I'll just end it. Thank you all. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good comfy night. I love you all. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, true. Booba. Bye bye.